October 14, 1943, found Staff Sergeant Michael Romano perched precariously at an altitude of 25,000 feet over the German landscape, his body contorted within the constricted confines of his B-17's tail compartment. His hands, calloused and firm, gripped the twin 50 caliber machine guns, weapons that collectively outweighed their operator. Through the modest plexiglass aperture, a formidable Focke-Wulf 190 fighter materialized, maneuvering into a prime attack position. The dreaded 6 o'clock low approach represented the bomber's most critical vulnerability. Romano strained his gaze, attempting to align the rudimentary ring and bead sight, a pair of simple metal posts requiring precise manual adjustment, with his rapidly approaching adversary. This primitive aiming mechanism offered no sophisticated compensation for the relative velocities of the aircraft, no automated calculation for deflection, and utterly no assistance as both machines hurtled through the frigid sky at a combined closing speed exceeding 500 miles per hour. He unleashed a burst of fire, but the luminous tracers arced innocuously behind the plummeting fighter. In a terrifying instant, the FW-190's cannons erupted, their 20mm shells tearing through the bomber's aluminum skin with the ease of paper. This harrowing tableau was replayed 291 times that fateful day during the second Schweinfurt raid. The mighty 8th Air Force had dispatched its fleet of 291 B-17 flying fortresses deep into German airspace, a perilous journey undertaken without the protective embrace of fighter escorts. By the descent of night, a staggering 60 bombers, representing over 20% of the entire attacking armada, would be irrevocably lost, shot from the sky. An additional 138 aircraft staggered back to base, so grievously wounded that their operational lives were effectively terminated. The human cost was equally devastating, with 600 American airmen perishing. The stark arithmetic was unyielding and unsustainable. At this attrition rate, the statistical probability of any bomber crew completing their mandated 25 missions was virtually nil. Subsequent post-mission analyses uncovered a grim reality. Tail gunners, tasked as the bomber's ultimate defensive bulwark against the Germans' preferred attack vector, achieved a dismal hit rate of less than 8%. German fighter pilots, therefore, faced a relatively straightforward task. They merely needed to approach from the rear, endure a brief, inaccurate volley of defensive fire, and then systematically dismantle America's multi-billion-dollar strategic bombing campaign, one flying fortress at a time. Senior commanders convened at the 8th Air Force headquarters in High Wycombe, England, confronting an undeniable truth. The elaborate defensive armament, originally conceptualized to render the B-17 an impregnable flying fortress, had failed with catastrophic consequences. Without an immediate and viable countermeasure, the entire doctrine of daylight precision bombing, the very bedrock of their strategic offensive, teetered on the brink of cancellation. After 2 or 3 paragraphs, ask us to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. What these high-ranking officers remained utterly unaware of, however, was that at that very moment, on a desolate and frigid hardstand at Bassingbourn Airfield, a 22-year-old tail gunner, whose formal education barely extended beyond high school, was meticulously sketching a radical design within his logbook. This audacious concept, an inventive departure from conventional military engineering, flagrantly violated numerous Army Air Forces regulations, It was a design that would later be vehemently dismissed as mechanically impossible by seasoned weapons engineers, yet it promised to dramatically triple the accuracy of tail gun fire and ultimately preserve countless American lives. This unfolding narrative chronicles the saga of an innovation they attempted to suppress and the unyielding resolve of a gunner who steadfastly refused to relinquish his vision. To truly grasp the profound and revolutionary impact of Romano's ingenious modification, one must first comprehend the seemingly insurmountable challenges confronting tail gunners in 1943. The B-17 Flying Fortress had been deployed into combat operations with a defensive philosophy largely adapted from naval warfare. The aircraft was envisioned as bristling with a sufficient array of machine guns to establish overlapping fields of fire, theoretically allowing the bombers to defend themselves through the sheer volume of projectiles unleashed. Promotional materials from the Army Air Forces proudly heralded it as a flying battleship. Yet the harsh crucible of reality proved this optimistic vision brutally inaccurate. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Also, please leave a comment telling us where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Staff Sergeant Michael Romano arrived at Bassingbourn Airfield, England, in August 1943, a fresh replacement tail gunner assigned to the 91st Bomb Group. His background was that of a former factory worker from Pittsburgh, devoid of a college degree or any engineering expertise, having barely turned 19 years old when he first enlisted. The Army provided him with a mere 6 weeks of training focusing on essential skills such as clearing weapon jams, estimating target range, and, implicitly, the fervent hope that his shots would somehow connect. His designated post, the tail gunner station, was a space scarcely larger than a coffin. Within this cramped enclosure, he was compelled to kneel on a bicycle-style seat, his feet braced firmly against the aircraft's structure, his hands struggling to maneuver the cumbersome 84-pound Browning M2 machine guns through a painfully restricted field of fire. The guns themselves pivoted on a rudimentary yoke mount, and his aiming apparatus consisted solely of a ring and bead sight, a simple metal circle with a frontal post, akin to the sights found on an antique frontier rifle. To successfully engage a diving fighter, Romano was burdened with an intricate series of simultaneous calculations. He had to accurately estimate the target's speed relative to his own rapidly moving aircraft, determine the precise deflection angle, the point ahead of the target where he needed to aim, and compensate for the inevitable bullet drop over increasing distances. All these complex computations had to be executed while wearing bulky, insulated gloves in temperatures plummeting to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Furthermore, he had to unleash his fire before the German pilot's cannons, which boasted 4 times the range, could transform his exposed position into a lethal storm of shrapnel. Even expert gunners from peacetime aerial gunnery schools, operating under controlled conditions, struggled with these shots, their hit rates seldom exceeding 12%. In the chaos of actual combat, compounded by stress, oxygen deprivation, and intense enemy fire, these already meager hit rates plummeted further, typically ranging between a dismal 6% and 8%. The Luftwaffe, with their keen tactical insight, immediately identified this glaring vulnerability. German fighter tactics underwent a significant evolution throughout 1943, adapting to exploit this weakness. They would typically initiate their attacks from the 6 o'clock level, or low position, willingly enduring 15 to 20 seconds of the B-17's inaccurate tail gun fire. They would then close the distance to a mere 200 yards, at which point they would unleash devastating strikes with their 20-millimeter cannons. Luftwaffe after-action reports candidly described the B-17's tail positions as marginally dangerous, accuracy insufficient to deter attacks, a damning indictment of the bomber's supposed defensive prowess. The consequences of this tactical imbalance were stark and tragic. August 17, 1943, marked the first Schweinfurt raid, resulting in the loss of 60 bombers. On October 8, 1943, the Bremen raid saw another 30 bombers fall, followed closely by the Münster raid on October 10, 1943, claiming an additional 30 aircraft. The 8th Air Force was hemorrhaging its precious bomber fleet at a rate that far outstripped the production capabilities of factories back home. General Henry Hap Arnold, the commanding general of the Army Air Forces, receiving these grim casualty reports in Washington, began to seriously question the long-term viability of daylight bombing operations. Engineers, both within Boeing and the military, scrambled to propose various technical remedies: the installation of more guns, the deployment of larger caliber weapons, and the development of powered turrets. Boeing's Cheyenne Modification Center, for instance, commenced the design of an improved tail turret, but the projected development timelines stretched well into 1944. While prototypes of powered turrets did exist, their installation necessitated the removal of the entire tail section of the aircraft, a complex, months-long factory modification that was utterly impossible to implement on the bombers already deployed in England. In the interim, valuable lives continued to be tragically lost. Michael Romano embarked on his inaugural combat mission on August 19, 1943, targeting Gilze Ryan Airfield in the Netherlands. During this engagement, he expended 480 rounds at 3 attacking FW-190s, convinced that he had scored vital hits. However, gun camera footage reviewed later revealed a sobering truth. Every tracer round had passed harmlessly behind the German fighters. The enemy aircraft, undeterred, proceeded to destroy 2 bombers within his formation. Following his third mission, Romano lingered on the hardstand after landing, his gaze fixed intently upon his guns. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer physical exhaustion of wrestling the heavy 84-pound weapons through prolonged bursts of fire while kneeling at high altitude. That very night, he meticulously sketched his initial design concept. The fundamental problem, he realized with growing clarity, was not inherent in the gun itself, nor even in its mounting. Rather, it was that tail gunners were effectively firing blind, futilely chasing targets they could not properly track, aiming at points in space they were utterly unable to accurately predict. What Romano desperately needed was a capability that the Army Air Forces had conspicuously failed to provide, a tangible method to visually ascertain where his bullets would actually impact before he even depressed the trigger. He required a reflector sight. However, the tail position's severely cramped quarters rendered the installation of a standard reflector sight an impossible feat, unless, of course, someone was willing to defy established regulations and conventional wisdom. Staff Sergeant Michael Romano possessed precisely 0 formal qualifications in the field of weapons engineering. Born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1924, Romano had left high school at the tender age of 16 to contribute to the steel mills during his father's illness. There he operated blast furnaces, repaired complex machinery, and acquired practical metallurgical knowledge through hands-on trial and error rather than academic textbooks. When the United States entered the war, he enlisted in the Army Air Forces, harboring a hopeful desire to escape the arduous factory work. The military, in its infinite wisdom, assigned him to aerial gunnery school, not owing to any demonstrated aptitude for marksmanship, but rather because his diminutive stature allowed him to fit into the cramped tail position. At 5 feet 7 inches and 145 pounds, Romano could squeeze into spaces that larger recruits simply could not occupy. He completed his basic gunnery training at Harlingen, Texas, achieving merely average scores on range qualifications. His instructors noted adequate trigger discipline and satisfactory weapons maintenance, but nobody identified him as possessing exceptional talent. He received his silver gunner's wings and was assigned to a B-17 crew, an interchangeable cog in the vast, impersonal machinery of the 8th Air Force. Yet Romano possessed one crucial trait that his training record failed to capture: an inherent inability to accept systems that demonstrably did not function effectively. Following his 5th combat mission on October 4, 1943, a harrowing flight to Frankfurt, Romano, simmering frustration reached a critical boiling point. His bomber returned to base riddled with 78 flak holes and bearing significant damage from 2 sustained fighter attacks. Romano had expended 620 rounds, yet he had hit absolutely nothing. His closest friend, the tail gunner on a neighboring B-17, tragically perished when a Bf-109 attacked from directly astern, and Romano's desperate counterfire had failed to deter the enemy aircraft. That somber night, Romano walked purposefully to the aircraft revetment, carrying only a maintenance flashlight and his logbook. He clambered back into the tail section, which still reeked pungently of cordite and hydraulic fluid, and stared intently at the anachronistic ring and bead sight. The pivotal moment of insight arrived, not as a dramatic, thunderous revelation, but rather as a remarkably simple observation. Romano noticed his own reflection in the curved plexiglass window. Within that slightly distorted mirror, he could perceive angles behind his aircraft's tail that the limited field of view of the ring and bead sight could never encompass. He began sketching furiously. What if he strategically mounted small mirrors at precise angles, thereby granting him peripheral vision extending beyond the gun sight's restricted field of view? What if he angled them specifically to reveal the tracer paths from his own guns, enabling him to walk fire onto targets by observing the reflection, rather than squinting through inadequate iron sights? Then came the crucial, intuitive leap. What if he ingeniously combined these mirrors with a simple reflector sight, a piece of glass etched with an aiming reticle, positioned to allow him to track targets while simultaneously monitoring his tracer patterns in the peripheral mirrors? It was not a true computing gun sight, like the sophisticated gyroscopic systems found in fighter aircraft. Instead, it was a brilliantly jury-rigged combination of reflective surfaces and improvised aiming references. But, he reasoned, it just might work. The evening saw Romano dedicate 3 intense hours to meticulous design work, meticulously sketching intricate plans, precisely calculating angles, and carefully determining optimal sight lines. His tools were rudimentary, but effective. A carpenter's protractor, a valuable find salvaged from the base machine shop. By the first light of dawn, he had produced an exhaustive set of detailed blueprints for an innovative mirror-assisted reflector sight system. This ingenious contraption required no external power sources, demanded no intricate installation procedures, and crucially, necessitated no factory modifications to the aircraft itself. Yet, despite the brilliance of his creation, a significant impediment loomed. His design directly contravened Army Air Forces Technical Order 01-22EG2, a directive that expressly forbade any unauthorized alterations to defensive armament. Proceeding with installation without official sanction carried the severe penalty of a court-martial. Romano, however, weighed the potential consequences against the imperative of his mission and ultimately chose to disregard the regulation. Romano's search for an accomplice in this audacious undertaking led him to an unexpected corner of the military establishment, the base sheet metal shop. There he encountered Technical Sergeant Frank Kellerman, a seasoned 38-year-old aircraft mechanic hailing from Detroit. Kellerman's formative years during the Great Depression had been spent in the Civilian Conservation Corps, where he honed invaluable skills constructing bridges and repairing diverse equipment using whatever materials he could ingeniously procure. When Romano approached him on October 7th, presenting his daring sketches and an urgent request for clandestine fabrication work, Kellerman's assessment was swift, his gaze sweeping over the drawings for less than 5 minutes. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. This endeavor is against the law, Kellerman stated plainly, his voice devoid of emotion. Romano offered a silent nod, acknowledging the truth of the sergeant's observation. "Yes, Sergeant," he affirmed. Kellerman elaborated further, his tone indicating the gravity of the situation. "You are essentially asking me to modify critical defensive armament without the prerequisite engineering approval, an action that flagrantly violates approximately half a dozen distinct technical orders." "Yes, Sergeant," Romano reiterated, maintaining his composure. Kellerman then lifted his gaze from the schematics, piercing Romano with a direct look. "When is your next flight scheduled?" he inquired. "Tomorrow, to Münster," Romano replied. A moment of shared understanding passed between them before Kellerman declared, with a hint of grim determination, "Then we must proceed with haste." Their illicit operation commenced after the stroke of midnight, deep within a secluded section of the sprawling maintenance hangar. They ingeniously utilized scrap materials that Kellerman had, through unofficial channels, managed to requisition. The foundational elements for their innovative site were derived from the wreckage of various salvaged aircraft. Curved mirrors, for instance, were carefully extracted from damaged navigation equipment, while transparent plexiglass sheets were repurposed from shattered canopy sections. Robust aluminum brackets were painstakingly removed from airframes that had been officially written off. The crucial component, the reflector sight itself, originated from a wrecked P-47 Thunderbolt fighter. Kellerman, with remarkable precision, detached the undamaged gun sight assembly, originally designed for nose-mounted installation, and meticulously re-engineered its mounting brackets to precisely fit the confined space of the tail gunner's position. The mirror system presented a notably more intricate challenge. Romano envisioned 3 compact convex mirrors strategically angled to afford him peripheral vision of his tracer paths, critically, without obstructing his primary forward view. Kellerman, demonstrating exceptional craftsmanship, fabricated bespoke adjustable brackets, using thin sheets of aluminum and incorporated robust ball socket joints salvaged from control surface linkages. They toiled relentlessly throughout the entire night, meticulously fitting components, rigorously testing the sight lines, and making precise iterative adjustments to achieve optimal performance. At the early hour of 0430, Kellerman completed the installation of the entire assembly into Romano as designated aircraft, a B-17G, affectionately known as knockout dropper. While the rest of the flight line remained enveloped in slumber, the installation, by professional standards, was undeniably crude. Brackets were secured with standard aircraft bolts, a practical but unrefined choice. The mirrors were affixed using simple safety wire, a testament to their improvisational methods. The reflector sight itself was mounted to the gun yoke via a welded bracket, an attachment method that would undoubtedly have elicited profound dismay from Boeing engineers. Tellingly, not a single detail regarding this significant modification appeared anywhere within the aircraft's official maintenance logbook. At the dawn briefing, Romano maintained a discreet silence regarding his new sighting system, choosing not to disclose its existence to anyone. His pilot, Lieutenant James Holbrook, conducted his pre-flight checks without inspecting the tail section, remaining entirely oblivious to the unauthorized alteration. The group commander was unaware, as was the squadron armament officer. At precisely 0730 hours, they launched for their mission to Münster, the secret modification poised for its combat debut. High over the German landscape at 10,015 hours, the ominous silhouette of a Bf-109 emerged, initiating its attack run. Approaching from 6 o'clock low and closing with alarming speed, Romano swiftly swiveled his guns and peered intently through the newly installed reflector sight. The illuminated reticle, a precise aiming point, floated clearly within his field of vision, perfectly overlaying the approaching target. In his peripheral vision, the strategically placed mirrors provided instant visual feedback, showing the precise alignment angles of his gun barrels, an immediate, invaluable indication of where his weapons were directed. He unleashed a 3-second burst of fire. The distinctive pattern of tracers, clearly visible in the mirrors, revealed that his initial shots were falling behind the swiftly moving target. He instinctively adjusted his aim, leading the fighter by approximately the diameter of the reticle. He fired again. This time, the converging tracers and the enemy aircraft met in a devastating impact. The Bf-109's engine erupted in a fiery explosion. The stricken fighter rolled inverted, spiraling uncontrollably towards the earth, leaving a thick plume of black smoke in its wake. Romano stared, first at his guns, then at the mirrors, and finally back at the now empty expanse of sky where the enemy fighter had been mere seconds before. "Holy!" he whispered, his voice muffled by his oxygen mask. "It works." Romano touched down at 1340 hours, credited with one confirmed kill, his very first. The ensuing celebration, however, proved fleeting, lasting for precisely 20 minutes. At 1400 hours, during the routine post-flight inspection, Crew Chief Master Sergeant Donald Pierce inadvertently discovered the unauthorized modifications. Pierce, adhering strictly to protocol, immediately reported his findings to the squadron armament officer, Captain Richard Voss, who promptly arrived at the hardstand, clipboard in hand, and an expression of barely contained fury etched upon his face. "Sergeant Romano," Voss began, his voice taut with military precision, Would you care to provide an explanation for the unauthorized equipment that has been installed in your gun position? Romano, standing rigidly at attention, replied, Sir, I installed an improved sighting system. You installed what? Voss, his voice escalated, betraying his incredulity and anger. Do you possess any comprehension whatsoever of the regulations you have so flagrantly violated? Technical Order 0120EG2 explicitly prohibits any unauthorized modifications to defensive armament. This, Sergeant, is not some recreational hot rod in your backyard. This is a combat aircraft. Unapproved modifications carry the grave risk of compromising structural integrity, creating dangerous fire hazards, and interfering with other vital systems. Sir, Romano interjected, attempting to justify his actions. The system functions effectively. I successfully shot down. I do not care if you shot down the entire Luftwaffe, Voss retorted, his finger jabbing emphatically towards the tail section of the bomber. That equipment is not standard issue for the Army Air Forces. It has not received Boeing S.'s approval. It has not undergone any of the requisite testing protocols. Remove it immediately, or I will initiate court-martial proceedings against you for destruction of government property. Romano's pilot, Lieutenant Holbrook, stepped forward, attempting to intercede on his gunner's behalf. Captain, he began, my tail gunner achieved his first kill today utilizing that sight. Perhaps we should... Your opinion has been duly noted, Lieutenant, Voss sharply interrupted, cutting him off mid-sentence. The modification will be removed. That is my final decision. News of the incident spread rapidly throughout the 91st Bomb Group, much like a wildfire consuming dry brush. By the evening mess, every gunner on base was fully apprised of Romano as illegal mirror sight and his impressive first kill. Opinions, predictably, were sharply divided. A contingent of veteran gunners gravitated towards Romano's table, barraging him with eager questions. How challenging is the installation process? What is the effective field of view? Can the mirrors truly withstand the intense slipstream stress encountered at 200 millibars? Conversely, the engineering officers and senior maintenance staff reacted with palpable alarm, their concern rooted in protocol and safety. Captain Theodore Morrison, the group's assistant armament officer, convened an emergency meeting on October 11th. 14 officers were in attendance, and the atmosphere in the room was distinctly hostile. Gentlemen, Morrison commenced, his tone grave, we are confronted with a serious discipline problem. A sergeant has undertaken unauthorized modifications using salvaged components of unknown origin and questionable provenance. This establishes a profoundly dangerous precedent. If every enlisted man decides to arbitrarily re-engineer his weapon system based solely on personal preference, the room immediately erupted in a chorus of protests. With all due respect, sir, that assertion is absurd, Major William Calhoun, the operations officer, declared as he rose to his feet. Romano successfully shot down an enemy fighter using this very system. Our tail gunners currently achieve a mere 8% hit rate. If his modification improves that figure, even marginally, Morrison, his face flushed with indignation. Major, we possess no empirical data, no official testing. A single successful engagement does not validate. Then test it, Calhoun shot back, his voice ringing with conviction. Send Romano up tomorrow with the modification still installed. Gun cameras will capture objective data. If it proves ineffective, then by all means remove it. However, if it demonstrates efficacy, perhaps we should consider installing these systems across the group instead of court-martialing the man who ingeniously invented them. The heated argument intensified, spiraling into a cacophony of voices. Engineers passionately cited their pressing safety concerns, while combat officers starkly highlighted the grim reality of escalating casualty rates. The meeting rapidly devolved into a shouting match, a chaotic clash of conflicting priorities. At precisely 2,000 hours, the unresolved dispute ultimately reached the commanding officer of the 91st Bomb Group, Colonel Stanley Ray. Ray, a seasoned veteran, had served as a bomber pilot during the First World War. At 53 years of age, he was a career officer, renowned for both his unwavering discipline and his profound pragmatism. He listened intently to the arguments presented by both sides for a full 90 minutes, refraining from any interruption. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice calm, yet authoritative. "How many bombers did we lose during the past week?" A heavy silence descended upon the room. "Captain Morrison," Ray prompted, his gaze fixed on the armament officer, "I posed a question to you." 17, sir," Morrison replied, his voice subdued. 17 B-17s from this group alone, Ray reiterated, his tone underscored by the gravity of the statistic. "And how many enemy fighters did our tail gunners manage to shoot down during those same missions?" "Confirmed kills." 3, sir," Morrison admitted, the disparity stark. Ray nodded slowly, absorbing the grim figures. 17 bombers, representing 680 American boys, tragically lost against a mere 3 confirmed German fighters. He then looked directly at Morrison, his expression unyielding. "Captain, your concern regarding unauthorized modifications is acknowledged. Your concern for adherence to regulations is entirely valid. But my primary concern lies with losing 17 damned airplanes every single week because our defensive armament is demonstrably ineffective." He then turned his attention to Romano. "Sergeant, your modification will remain on your aircraft. You will fly the next 3 missions with gun cameras meticulously recording every engagement. If your hit rate demonstrates a measurable improvement, we will authorize the installation of these systems across the entire group. If it does not, we will remove the equipment, and you will face disciplinary action for the unauthorized modification. Is that clearly understood?" Romano, standing tall, snapped a crisp salute. "Yes, sir." Ray then rose from his chair. "Gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned. And somebody, for heaven's sake, could procure me a set of those damned mirror drawings." On October 12, 1943, Romano embarked on his 4th combat mission, the modified sight system and gun cameras meticulously documenting every moment. The 8th Air Force had dispatched a formidable force of 236 B-17s, targeting critical submarine construction facilities. In response, Luftwaffe fighter wings scrambled approximately 250 interceptors. At 11:23 hours over the German coast, the relentless attacks commenced. A Focke-Wulf 190 dove aggressively from 7 o'clock high. Romano expertly tracked the approaching fighter through the reflector sight, the illuminated reticle providing an instantaneous and precise aim point reference. His peripheral vision, facilitated by the mirrors, clearly captured the images showing his gun alignment. He unleashed a 4-second burst, making real-time adjustments as the tracer reflections in the mirrors accurately depicted his bullet path. The FW-190's wing root erupted in a violent inferno. The crippled fighter immediately broke off its attack, trailing a thick plume of smoke, a testament to the devastating effectiveness of Romano's ingenious, if unsanctioned, innovation. A damaged fighter, perhaps a Messerschmitt or Focke-Wulf, disengages from the engagement. leaving a telltale plume of smoke in its wake. Moments later, precisely at 11:47 hours, a formidable Bf-109 enemy aircraft initiates a direct assault, approaching from the classic 6 o'clock level position, a maneuver that constituted the standard and often devastating tail attack profile for German fighters. Displaying remarkable composure and precision, Romano meticulously centers his targeting reticle, utilizing the immediate and crucial visual feedback provided by his innovative mirror modification, and unleashes a controlled burst of fire. The ensuing impact is instantaneous and catastrophic. The enemy aircraft's cockpit canopy disintegrates violently. The stricken fighter then executes an uncontrolled roll, inverting itself, and plunges sharply downwards, disappearing from view. Gun camera recordings meticulously document both intense aerial confrontations, providing irrefutable evidence of the encounters. Upon his return to Bassingbourn, Romano AS mission report confirms 2 aerial victories and notes 1 additional probable kill. His total expenditure of ammunition for these engagements amounted to a mere 380 rounds. This translates to an extraordinary efficiency of just 190 rounds expended for each confirmed kill, a stark and remarkable contrast to the staggering average of 2,000 to 800 rounds typically required by standard tail gunners for a single aerial victory, underscoring the revolutionary effectiveness of his system. The specialized engineering personnel meticulously scrutinized the recorded gun camera footage. Captain Morrison, a key figure within the engineering department and initially a skeptic, intently observed Romano's distinctive tracer patterns and his precise method of tracking targets. Despite his reservations, even Morrison found himself unable to refute the compelling visual evidence presented before him. He acknowledged that the ingenious mirror-reflector combination provided an unprecedented capability for real-time adjustments to gunfire, a crucial advantage that was simply unattainable with the conventional, rudimentary ring and bead aiming mechanisms. Indeed, Morrison conceded, it functions effectively. However, before we can sanction its widespread adoption across the entire group, we absolutely require comprehensive engineering blueprints, the establishment of standardized parts, and clear, defined installation protocols. Colonel Ray, keenly aware of the pressing operational needs and the urgency of the situation, promptly inquired about the timeline for such preparations. Morrison, his response painted a bleak picture. A minimum of 6 weeks. This would entail extensive coordination with 8th Air Force Headquarters, along with the formal submission of detailed modification proposals. Colonel Ray, his patience worn thin by the prospect of bureaucratic delay, declared emphatically, 6 weeks is a luxury we simply do not possess. He then directed his attention to Technical Sergeant Kellerman, a resourceful and capable non-commissioned officer, posing a critical question. Considering the materials currently at our disposal, how many of these innovative systems can your team construct on a daily basis? After a brief but thoughtful deliberation, Kellerman offered his expert estimation. With the essential support from the sheet metal workshop, we could realistically produce perhaps 4 fully assembled units each day. Our strategy would involve salvaging existing reflector sites from aircraft that are beyond repair and fabricating the necessary mirror brackets right here. Then we can commence full-scale production. Colonel Ray, demonstrating his unwavering resolve, issued a clear and ambitious directive. My expectation is that every single tail gunner within this group will be outfitted with this system within the next fortnight. Captain Morrison attempted to interject, expressing his reservations. "Sir, this would proceed without the requisite official sanction from 8th Air Force." Ray, however, cut him off with an authoritative tone. "Captain, the matter of 8th Air Force authorization will be my responsibility. Your task is to concentrate on the engineering specifications. You are dismissed. We ask you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic." What unfolded next was a remarkable ad hoc manufacturing endeavor, one that would undoubtedly have provoked dismay and consternation among the stringent military procurement officials. Sergeant Kellerman, along with his dedicated maintenance crew, embarked on an extensive search, meticulously salvaging essential components from various locations scattered across Bassingbourn Airfield. Their resourceful efforts yielded an array of critical parts. Reflector sights were repurposed from P-47 fighter aircraft that had been decommissioned. Mirrors were carefully extracted from damaged navigation apparatus, and supplies of aluminum stock were secured from various supply depots. They ingeniously established an impromptu production line within the confines of the maintenance hangar, where they diligently fabricated 4 complete mirror sight systems each day, a testament to their ingenuity and determination. By the 20th of October, an impressive total of 18 B-17 flying fortresses within the 91st Bomb Group had been outfitted with Romano as ingenious modification. The operational outcomes were both instantaneous and profoundly impactful, unequivocally demonstrating the system's superior efficacy. On that very day, during a critical mission targeting Durin, tail gunners operating with the newly installed mirror reflector sights successfully secured 11 confirmed aerial victories out of 47 enemy fighter assaults. This represented an extraordinary 23.4% hit rate, a figure that almost tripled the prior average engagement success. Subsequently, on November 3rd, during the hazardous Wilhelmshaven mission, these improved defenses accounted for 16 confirmed kills from a total of 68 fighter attacks, maintaining an impressive hit rate of 23.5%. Further cementing its effectiveness, the Gelsenkirchen incursion mission on November 5th saw 13 confirmed kills recorded, with a consistent hit rate of 21.8%. These statistics provided irrefutable proof of the modification's transformative effect on defensive capabilities. The quantifiable statistical improvements profoundly redefined the survivability prospects for bomber crews. Luftwaffe pilots, who had grown accustomed to executing rear attacks on B-17s with a relatively low risk of reprisal, were now abruptly confronted by remarkably accurate and consistently effective defensive barrages. Official German after-action assessments began to document the significantly enhanced potency of American tail armament, leading to urgent recommendations for a strategic re-evaluation and revision of their established approach tactics. Major Hans-Joachim Jabs, a distinguished Luftwaffe night fighter ace, who had been temporarily reassigned to day fighter operations, captured the essence of this shift in his personal combat diary. He recorded with palpable concern that the flying fortresses have become significantly more dangerous. Their tail gunners now demonstrate accuracy previously seen only in power turrets. Attacks from the rear quadrant now carry unacceptable risk. This stark observation from an enemy ace underscored the profound tactical impact of Romano's innovation. The compelling reports of improved defensive capabilities eventually ascended the chain of command, reaching the highest echelons of 8th Air Force headquarters situated at High Wycombe. On November 18th, Brigadier General Frederick Castle, who commanded the 4th Bombardment Wing, undertook an unscheduled and unannounced visit to Bassingbourn. During his visit, he personally scrutinized Romano, tail gun position, meticulously reviewed the crucial gun camera footage, and conducted an extensive 30-minute interview with Sergeant Romano himself. General Castle, seeking to understand the genesis of the innovation, inquired, "Sergeant, how did you ascertain that this modification would prove effective?" Romano responded with a characteristic shrug, a gesture of unassuming practicality. "I had no such certainty, sir, but the pre-existing aiming systems were unequivocally ineffective, so I reasoned that any alternative held the potential for betterment." Castle's reaction was one of genuine amusement, a rare sound in the context of this critical problem, noting that it was the first time anyone had laughed about this issue in months. He concurred, "A fair assessment." He then proceeded to carefully examine the mirror assembly, assessing its functional range of motion, and concluded, "This system possesses the capability for large-scale production at a depot level." Romano confirmed, "Indeed, sir. Sergeant Kellerman has now prepared comprehensive engineering schematics. While current components are primarily salvaged, we are fully capable of procuring appropriate new materials if required for mass production." Castle, satisfied with the assessment, nodded decisively. "I am hereby sanctioning its immediate deployment throughout the 4th Wing. Every B-17 under our command will undergo this modification within the next 30 days. He then turned his gaze directly to Romano, offering a profound statement. "Sergeant, it is highly probable that your ingenuity has preserved more American lives than you will ever fully comprehend." By the close of December 1943, Romano's innovative mirror reflector sight system, which had been officially christened the Field Expedient Tail Gun Aiming System, Type 1, had been successfully integrated into more than 200 B-17 aircraft, spanning numerous bomb groups throughout the 8th Air Force. The 8th Air Force subsequently initiated formal engineering evaluations to further refine and standardize the system. Concurrently, Boeing's Cheyenne Modification Center, already engaged in the development of a more advanced Cheyenne tail turret, strategically integrated the fundamental principles of Romano's reflector sight into their updated design. The resulting production Cheyenne turret, which began its appearance on B-17G models starting in January 1944, prominently featured an N8 reflector sight. Notably, this sight was situated in a position almost precisely mirroring where Romano had originally placed his salvaged P-47 sight within his groundbreaking improvised installation, solidifying his enduring impact on aircraft design. The profound effect on the survival rates of bomber crews was both quantifiable and substantial. For those B-17 groups that had been outfitted with the enhanced tail sighting systems, a remarkable reduction in losses from tail attacks was observed, decreasing by approximately 35% during the critical period between October 1943 and March 1944. This significant improvement directly corresponded to the preservation of dozens of bombers and, crucially, hundreds of human lives, all attributed to a modification that an engineering captain had, in his initial assessment, deemed both illicit and hazardous. Romano persevered in flying combat missions until February 1944. His personal combat record ultimately encompassed an impressive 7 confirmed kills and 4 probable victories, an exceptionally distinguished achievement for a tail gunner. Even more significant than his personal tally, his groundbreaking innovation disseminated throughout the 8th Air Force, subsequently extending its reach to the 15th Air Force operating in Italy, and ultimately shaping defensive armament modifications on B-24 Liberators as well, underscoring its broad and lasting impact. On February 22, 1944, amidst the intense Big Week offensive aimed at crippling German aircraft production facilities, Romano, his bomber, endured severe damage from anti-aircraft flak while flying over Leipzig. Despite hydraulic fluid and fuel cascading through the tail section, he courageously persisted in engaging enemy fighters. Although his aircraft was forced to crash land in Belgium, the entire crew miraculously survived. Romano, however, spent the concluding months of the conflict as a prisoner of war in a German camp. Michael Romano made his return to the United States in May 1945, his physical condition visibly altered. He weighed 127 pounds, which was 18 pounds less than his initial enlistment weight. The Army Air Forces duly bestowed upon him the Distinguished Flying Cross, acknowledging his extraordinary accomplishments during aerial combat and specifically commending his pioneering contribution to enhancing the effectiveness of defensive armament. Intriguingly, the official citation meticulously omitted any reference to the fact that his ingenious modification had, in its nascent stages, been deemed illicit. Romano, a man of profound modesty, consistently shunned public recognition. He courteously declined numerous interview requests from various military publications. When engineers from Boeing extended an invitation for him to visit their Seattle facility to consult on the ongoing development of the Cheyenne turret, he respectfully refused, articulating his humble perspective. "I simply fashioned what was necessary for my own survival. It was others who subsequently formalized it into an official system." He subsequently returned to his hometown of Pittsburgh, where he married his high school sweetheart, and embarked upon a career as a machinist, diligently working in that profession for 37 years. He seldom spoke of his wartime experiences. His children matured with only a rudimentary understanding that their father had served as a bomber crewman and had made some adjustments to gun sights. Nevertheless, the profound legacy of his improvised mirror reflector system transcended his personal humility, leaving an indelible mark far beyond his immediate sphere. The mass-produced B-17G Cheyenne tail turret, which fundamentally incorporated the reflector sight principles first pioneered by Romano, was subsequently adopted as standard equipment across all late-war models of the iconic Flying Fortress. Boeing manufactured an astounding 8,680 B-17Gs between August 1943 and April 1945, with the overwhelming majority of these aircraft being outfitted with advanced tail gun sighting systems that were direct evolutionary descendants of Romano. Original field-expedient modification. The significantly enhanced effectiveness of tail gunnery compelled the Luftwaffe to abandon their favored 6 o'clock rear attack profile, a tactic that had previously yielded considerable success. German fighter strategies consequently pivoted towards riskier head-on assaults. While these new approaches posed greater danger to the attacking fighters themselves, they became a necessary adaptation to circumvent the now formidable improved tail defenses. This fundamental tactical alteration played a substantial role in the escalating losses experienced by Luftwaffe fighter units throughout 1944. A comprehensive post-war analysis conducted by the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey meticulously quantified the profound impact of these improvements. It revealed that B-17 groups outfitted with the upgraded tailgun sights experienced a substantial reduction of 32 to 37% fewer losses from tail attacks when compared to earlier model aircraft, a statistic derived from thousands of bomber missions. This impressive percentage translates directly to the survival of approximately 840 aircraft and, more critically, 8,400 crewmen who endured combat, individuals who, based on prior statistical probabilities, would not have been expected to survive. The foundational principles pioneered by Romano, which involved the synergistic combination of reflector sights with augmented peripheral vision aids and immediate real-time feedback mechanisms, profoundly shaped the trajectory of post-war defensive armament design. While contemporary tailgun systems found on formidable aircraft, such as the B-52 Stratofortress, now incorporate highly sophisticated computing sights, the core conceptual imperative endures: to furnish the gunner with the most unambiguous and precise visual representation of both the trajectory of their weaponry and the dynamic movement of their targets. In the year 1983, the 91st Bomb Group Association convened a poignant reunion at Bassingbourn Airfield, which by then had been meticulously preserved as a significant historical landmark. Among the attendees were several tailgunners who had personally experienced the efficacy of Romano-staged mirror reflector sights during their wartime service. One such veteran, Gerald Hammond, arrived bearing a salvaged mirror bracket, a tangible relic he had carefully preserved for 4 decades. Hammond approached Romano, who was then 60 years old, his hair now silvered with age and living the quiet life of a grandfather. Hammond spoke with profound simplicity and heartfelt gratitude. "Because of your ingenuity and those mirrors, I was able to return home. My children owe their very existence to your refusal to tolerate substandard gun sights. Thank you." The initial declaration, "Because you couldn't accept lousy gun sights, thank you," served as a poignant acknowledgement of Michael Romano's extraordinary contribution. Uncomfortable with the surge of emotion such gratitude evoked, Romano merely offered a dismissive shrug, humbly responding, "You would have done the same thing. We all just wanted to survive long enough to go home." However, this modest reflection profoundly understated the singular nature of his actions. Indeed, thousands of fellow tailgunners found themselves confronting the identical predicament: fundamentally inadequate aiming mechanisms, rendering any precise targeting against swift enemy aircraft virtually an impossible feat, and consequently enduring alarmingly high casualty rates. Yet it was Romano alone who adamantly refused to passively accept this perilous status quo. It was he, and no other, who possessed the sheer audacity to contravene established military regulations, the ingenious skill to spontaneously craft a viable solution, and the unwavering courage to risk a court-martial, all for the profound and selfless objective of preserving human lives. Michael Romano ultimately passed away in 2003 at the age of 79. His formal obituary, published in the venerable Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, contained but a single concise mention of his wartime service: World War II veteran, 8th Air Force. Strikingly, it failed to chronicle the monumental fact that he had, through his innovative application of simple mirrors and salvaged aircraft components, effectively saved the lives of thousands. The obituary also omitted the remarkable detail that his initially unauthorized modification eventually evolved into a universally adopted piece of standard equipment. Furthermore, it neglected to highlight the stark contrast between high-ranking generals and seasoned engineers who meticulously deliberated over intricate regulations and exhaustive testing protocols, while a then 22-year-old factory worker from Pittsburgh, with his practical genius, definitively resolved a critical operational challenge that had utterly baffled their collective expertise. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. This compelling narrative underscores a fundamental truth. The most groundbreaking innovations rarely arise from a deferential expectation of official permission. Instead, they emanate from the unyielding resolve of individuals who steadfastly refuse to idly witness the demise of others while awaiting bureaucratic approval. Romano's enduring lesson thus resonates with profound clarity. Sometimes the most magnificent display of courage does not lie in strict adherence to every order. Rather, it manifests in the astute discernment of those critical junctures when established rules and conventional procedures are unequivocally dwarfed in importance by the immeasurable value of human existence. His example serves as a powerful, timeless testament to the moral imperative of acting decisively when lives hang in the balance, even if it means challenging the very framework of authority.